Imagine falling in love, but the law says your marriage is not real. Imagine building a family, but someone else can sell your husband, wife, or child tomorrow. Between 1619 and 1865, millions of enslaved Africans in the United States tried to build families under a brutal system that refused to recognize their humanity. Slave marriages were often illegal, unrecorded, and constantly under threat. A husband could be sold to another plantation. A mother could be separated from her children. And yet, enslaved people still found ways to marry, love, and resist. They jumped over brooms. They held secret ceremonies. They promised each other forever, even when the law said forever was impossible. But the most shocking truth is this. Before we dive into the main story, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell notification button for more interesting video like this. Even after emancipation in 1865, thousands of formerly enslaved couples had to legally remarry because the government had never recognized their unions. So the question is, how did enslaved people keep marriage alive inside a system designed to destroy their families? And why did slave owners sometimes encourage marriage, even while refusing to recognize it? The answers reveal one of the most powerful stories of resilience in American history. The story begins in 1619, when a ship carrying enslaved Africans arrived at Point Comfort in the English colony of Virginia Colony. These Africans were forced into labor systems that soon hardened into racial slavery. Unlike European indentured servants, enslaved Africans gradually lost all legal rights. By the late 1600s, colonial laws began defining enslaved people as property instead of persons. One major consequence was devastating. Slave marriages had no legal status. This meant husbands and wives could be separated. Parents had no legal rights to their children. Families could be sold apart at any time. Despite this, enslaved people continued forming marriages and families. By the 18th century, slavery had expanded across colonies such as Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia. Slaveholders refused to legally recognize enslaved marriages because doing so might give enslaved people rights over family members. Instead, marriages existed only through community recognition. Ceremonies were simple but meaningful. Some enslaved couples were married by ministers. Others performed a symbolic ritual called jumping the broom. This tradition likely combined African cultural practices with European customs. When the couple jumped over a broom together, it symbolized entering a new household as husband and wife. But even these ceremonies had no protection under the law. One of the cruelest aspects of slavery was forced separation. Enslaved families could be torn apart through plantation sales, inheritance transfers, debt payments. Slave traders frequently broke families apart during auctions. Major slave markets existed in cities such as New Orleans, Richmond, Charleston. Historians estimate hundreds of thousands of enslaved marriages were destroyed by forced sales before the Civil War. Former slave Frederick Douglass later wrote about the emotional trauma enslaved families endured. Children were sometimes sold hundreds of miles away, never seeing their parents again. Yet enslaved communities tried to maintain family ties whenever possible. Another unique form of enslaved marriage was called an abroad marriage. This happened when a husband and wife lived on different plantations owned by different slaveholders. In these cases, the husband often received permission to visit his wife only on weekends. He might walk 10 to 20 miles after finishing plantation labor. These visits became known as Saturday night marriages. But permission could be revoked at any time. A new owner could sell either spouse without warning. Surprisingly, some slaveholders encouraged enslaved people to marry. But their motivations were economic, not humanitarian. Marriage could create stability on plantations, reduce escape attempts, increase births of enslaved children. Because under American slave law, a child's status followed the mother's condition. This legal principle was established in 1662 by the Virginia law called Partus Sequitur Ventrum. If the mother was enslaved, the child automatically became enslaved. This policy turned enslaved women's reproduction into a source of profit. Slaveholders often referred to children as future laborers. After the United States banned the international slave trade in 1808, slavery did not disappear. Instead, a massive domestic slave trade developed. More than 1 million enslaved people were forcibly relocated from the Upper South to the Deep South. This movement expanded cotton plantations in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas. The domestic slave trade destroyed thousands of marriages. Slave narratives recorded heartbreaking scenes of husbands chasing wagons carrying their wives and children away. Despite constant threats, enslaved communities built strong marriage traditions. Ceremonies often took place at night in slave quarters. Music, prayer, and storytelling were common. Christianity also influenced many slave marriages. Enslaved ministers sometimes performed ceremonies secretly. These weddings represented acts of resistance. Even when the law refused to recognize their humanity, enslaved couples recognized each other. Everything began to change during the American Civil War. As the war progressed, enslaved people escaped plantations and joined Union lines. Then in 1863, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in Confederate states free. But true nationwide freedom arrived only after the war ended. In 1865, the United States ratified the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, permanently ending slavery. For the first time, formerly enslaved couples could legally marry. Government agencies like the Freedmen's Bureau helped formalize marriages. Across the South, thousands of couples who had lived as husband and wife for decades finally registered their marriages legally. Some were elderly couples who had spent 30 or 40 years together without legal recognition. Marriage records from this period show a powerful moment in history. Freedom meant the right to protect family bonds. Even after slavery ended, the damage to black families continued. Decades of forced separations created lasting trauma. But the resilience of enslaved communities left a powerful legacy. Their determination to love, marry, and build families under impossible conditions became one of the most profound acts of resistance in American history. Today, millions of Americans are descendants of enslaved couples whose marriages were never recorded in law. Historians are still uncovering their stories through slave narratives and Freedmen's Bureau records. But one haunting question remains. How many families were permanently lost because the law once treated human beings as property? And what forgotten love stories are still hidden in the archives of history? For more videos like this, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.